Now let's say you wanted to find out the number of days of a certain day, let's say Monday in a specific month, let's say January 2023. And all you need to do is enter that day and hit invoke, and your query tells you exactly how many times that day occurs in that month. Let's see how we can do this. To understand the concept of List.Accumulate, I would suggest that you watch this video here first, if you haven't already. Then definitely come back to watch this after. First, let's see how this query works in Excel. I've added the column headers here. Our list would be our dates from 1 January to 31 January. Our seed or start value is 0, so we can enter that in our first opening cell. Let's leave the rest of the opening column blank for now. Our current column will be the same as our list column, so let's fill that down. Our closing is our accumulator function. To understand how the logic works for this function, let's add a list of days here, and I've called it day. These days correspond to the dates in the current column. So let's filter on Monday. And these are the dates that Monday occurs on, so that's 5 dates. Our closing will be calculated as follows. If day equals Monday, and let's remember to insert our inverted commas here, then we want our opening plus 1 to be returned, else we just want opening to be returned. And hit enter, and let's fill that down. And now let's calculate our opening, which is the previous row's closing. And let's fill that down. And our table correctly returns a value of 5 at the end of our calculation. Now let's find out how to turn this into a powerful query using List.Accumulate. We're going to do this in 3 parts. The first query will be to generate our calendar for the month we want. Then we will generate our List.Accumulate query. And thirdly, we will create our custom function to invoke our query. In a blank workbook, let's open up a blank query, go to Data, Get Data from Other Sources, and click on Blank Query. Here in our query editor, let's first create our calendar. In the formula bar, type equals and the hash sign and type date and insert the open brackets. And here's where we will type our year, month, and day and press enter, and we get back our date. But we want to create a list from the 1st of January to the 31st of January. So to do this, let's type our date formula again, equals hash date and our year, month, and day. Then insert the 2 ellipses, as these operators show that this is from and to, and type the hash again and date and the year, month, and last day of the month. And let's insert the curly brackets at the beginning of this formula and the end of the formula, as lists are always in curly brackets, and press enter, and we get this expression error. That's because the from and to operator does not work with dates. So what type of data does it work with? It works with numbers. So let's convert these dates to numbers. In our formula bar, after the first curly bracket, let's type number.from, then insert the open bracket. As functions are always in brackets, just like in Excel, then insert the close bracket. So we have our from date. Then after the ellipses, type number.from and insert the open brackets and close brackets and hit enter, and we get this list of numbers. So our dates have now been converted to numbers. And you can see from this icon on the left here that this is a list. Next, in the Transform tab, click on the Convert to Table function. In this dialog box, let's keep the defaults as is and click on OK. And we've now converted our list to a table. And our icon shows a table as well. Now, all we need to do is change our data type to a date. And we now have our dates for the month of January. There's just one more transformation that we need to perform. Remember, in our List.Accumulate function, the first argument needs to be a list. And as our dates make up the list argument, we need to convert this table to a list. In the Transform tab, click on Convert to List, and we've now converted our dates to a list. To create our List.Accumulate formula, let's open up the Advanced Editor here in the Home tab. And here we have the code that Power Query generated to create our list of dates. Let's insert a comma after the square bracket of column 1. Hit enter so that we go to the next line. And let's name the step Calculated Loop. And type the equal sign. Next, let's type List.Accumulate and type the open bracket. And the close bracket is automatically inserted. Our first argument is our list, which we generated in our previous step, which is column 1. So let's type that here, and the IntelliSense brings it up so we can select it. Then insert a comma. Our seed or start will be 0, and insert a comma. Now we need to enter our accumulator function. As this is a function, let's insert the open brackets and type opening. Insert a comma and type current. Then after the close bracket, type the arrow operator, as this tells Power Query what needs to be done to our input. And let's type the if function and type date.day of week name, and the IntelliSense brings it up. This function will return the day of the week name for the date that we provide. So let's insert the open bracket. The first argument requires a date. And in our List.Accumulate function, the argument that generates the date is the current argument. So let's type current, and after the close bracket, type equals day, which is the same as what we have in our Excel explanation to help us keep track more easily. And type then, and we want opening +1 to be returned, else we want opening to be returned. So we have our calculated loop step that has our List.Accumulate function, which is made up of our list that is generated from our previous step in column 1, made up of our list of dates. We have our seed or start, which is 0, and we have our accumulator function that is made up of our inputs, opening and current, and we have what we want to be done to those inputs in our if function. So if our date is the same as the day that we input, then we want opening +1 to be returned, else only return opening. Let's change column 1 to calculated loop. We can copy that and paste it here, as we want the value from the calculated loop to be our output. Next, let's convert this query to a custom function. If you would like to learn more on custom functions, I highly recommend you watch this video here. The link is in the description also. Let's insert a space before let, as this is where we will tell Power Query this is a function rather than a query. Let's insert the opening brackets. The first part of our function needs to be our input. So let's name this input day. Just to take note here, the name of this input needs to be the same as what we used here in our if statement, else the query won't work. We also need to define what type this input is, so let's type as text, and let's insert the arrow operator, as this will define our function. So everything before the arrow operator is our input, and everything after the arrow operator is what needs to be done to our input. Everything looks good, so let's hit done. And we have our function. Let's rename this to number of days. And let's test out our function. Let's type Monday and hit invoke, and it correctly returns a total of 5 days. Let's test it out again, and this time let's try Thursday and hit invoke, and it correctly returns 4. Parameters are another way to provide you with a ton of flexibility to dynamically change the output of your queries depending on their value. If you would like to learn more on them, please check out this video here.